Dad perfect revents. My daughter-in-law said, "You live here free, hand over your savings, or find somewhere else to go." Those words hit me like a sledgehammer to the chest. I'm sitting at their kitchen table in Westerville, Ohio, the one with the fake granite countertop and mismatched chairs, looking at Barbara Miller, my son's wife, and I can see she's been planning this conversation for weeks. My name is Leonard Patterson. I'm 65 years old, and I used to think I understood people pretty well. Spent 40 years as a civil engineer, building bridges and roads that had to last. Turns out I wasn't so good at reading the people closest to me. It started innocently enough. My wife Dorothy passed away 3 years ago from pancreatic cancer. We'd been married 38 years, lived in our modest house on Oak Street in Dayton. The house had blue shutters that Dorothy painted every other spring, a front porch where we'd sit with evening coffee, and a kitchen where she'd hum while making her famous pot roast. After she died, I tried to keep going like nothing changed. But the house felt too big, too quiet. Every room echoed with memories I wasn't ready to face alone. My son Victor called every few days, worried about his old man rattling around alone. Victor's a good kid. Well, he's 37 now, works in IT down in Columbus. He married Barbara 5 years ago. She's a marketing director at some consulting firm, always dressed sharp in her blazers and heels, knows how to talk to people in that smooth, professional way. At the wedding, I thought she was a little too polished for our blue-collar family, but Dorothy said to give her time. She makes Victor happy, Dorothy had said, adjusting my tie in the church bathroom mirror. That's what matters. When COVID hit in March 2020, I was stuck in that empty house for weeks. No neighbors to wave to across the street, no Dorothy to share meals with, no reason to get dressed most days. The silence was crushing. That's when Victor made the offer during one of his evening check-in calls. "Dad, come stay with us for a while. We've got a finished basement, your own space. Just until things get back to normal." I packed a single suitcase, seemed wrong to pack more when Dorothy's clothes still hung in our bedroom closet, and drove the 90 minutes to Columbus. Their house in Westerville was nice, bigger than anything Dorothy and I ever had. 4 bedrooms, good neighborhood with sidewalks and young families, big backyard where my grandkids Teddy and Helly could play on their elaborate swing set. Being around them made me feel useful again, like I had a purpose beyond just existing. The basement setup was exactly what they'd promised. Private entrance through the back patio, full bathroom with a decent shower, little kitchenette with a mini fridge and microwave. The previous owners had installed laminate flooring and painted the walls a calming beige. I had my own space but could be part of the family when I wanted. Those first 6 months were genuinely good. Victor grilled burgers on weekend afternoons while I pushed Helly on the swings. Barbara made this incredible pot roast on Sundays that reminded me of Dorothy's, and we'd all sit around their dining room table like a real family. Teddy was 10, crazy about baseball stats, could recite batting averages like other kids knew video game codes. Helly was 7, obsessed with marine biology, constantly asking me to help her look up facts about deep-sea creatures on my tablet. Being around them made me remember why Dorothy and I had wanted grandchildren so badly, why we'd talked about the day when Victor would give us little ones to spoil. I wasn't freeloading. My pension from the county engineering department and Social Security brought in $3,800 a month, more money than I needed living in their basement. I paid for groceries twice a week, always the good stuff. Fresh vegetables, quality meat, name brand cereals for the kids. I picked up Teddy and Helly from school 3 days a week because Barbara's job kept her late and Victor's commute from downtown was unpredictable. When their dishwasher died in September, I didn't ask questions, just called the repair guy I found online and paid the $400 bill without mentioning it. I felt useful for the first time since Dorothy died, had morning coffee on the little patio, helped Helly with her science projects about ocean animals, taught Teddy how to calculate ERA and batting averages. Dorothy would have loved seeing me with the grandkids, would have sat in the backyard with us on Sunday afternoons. Probably would have become best friends with Barbara eventually. Around November, things started shifting, not dramatic, just little comments during dinner conversations. Barbara mentioned over their dining room table one evening that their utilities were higher than expected in the bigger house. Made sense, more square footage than their previous apartment, higher heating bills as winter approached. The house was beautiful, but old, probably not as energy efficient as modern construction. I offered to cover $200 a month toward utilities. She smiled, that professional marketing smile, and said that was very generous of me. By February, I was covering $300 for utilities plus internet, since I used Wi-Fi as much as anyone for my tablet and the occasional video call with my sister Margaret. In March, Barbara suggested we set up a shared grocery account when she was loading the dishwasher after Sunday dinner, steam rising from the hot plates. More efficient, she explained using her work voice. She could order everything online through one of those delivery services, save multiple trips to the store. Made sense on paper, less driving, better organization, bulk purchasing power. I transferred $500 a month into that shared account she set up. That's when I should have started paying attention to the numbers with my engineer's mind, but I was happy in a way I hadn't been since Dorothy's funeral. I had my morning coffee ritual on the little patio watching the neighborhood kids walk to school. I felt like I belonged somewhere again, like I was contributing to something larger than my own grief. The conversation I mentioned earlier, the one where Barbara dropped her ultimatum, happened on a Tuesday evening in May. Victor was working late on some server migration project. Kids were upstairs in their respective bedrooms doing homework. The house felt unusually quiet, just the hum of the central air conditioning and the distant sound of Helly practicing violin in her room. Barbara poured herself a glass of white wine from the bottle they kept in the door of their stainless steel refrigerator, sat across from me at their kitchen table where Wedge shared so many family dinners. "Leonard, we need to talk about the living arrangement," she said, using that professional voice she brought home from client meetings. The same tone she used when explaining marketing strategies to Victor's relatives at family gatherings. "I've been running some numbers, and honestly, we're struggling with the mortgage and car payments." I set down my coffee mug, the blue one Teddy had picked out for me at a school fundraiser. "I understand money's tight for young families," I said. "Is there something specific I can help with?" "The thing is," she continued, swirling her wine like she was buying time to choose her words carefully, "if we rented out the basement to a regular tenant, we could get $1,500 a month easily. Probably $1,700 in this market, considering the private entrance and full bathroom." I sat there feeling something cold settle in my stomach. The same feeling I used to get on construction sites when I spotted a structural problem everyone else had missed. "Are you saying you want me to pay rent?" "I'm saying we need to be practical about this situation. You're living here essentially free while we're covering the mortgage, property taxes, homeowner's insurance, maintenance costs. It's not sustainable long term." The way she said it, like she was explaining basic math to someone who could grasp simple concepts, that's what really got to me. I'd spent 40 years calculating load tolerances and stress points, managing million-dollar bridge construction projects where one mistake could cost lives. I understood numbers better than most people understood their own bank accounts. "How much are we talking about?" I asked, keeping my voice level. "Well, considering you're already contributing about $800 a month for utilities and groceries, if you could add another $700, that would bring it to $1,500. Fair market value for what you're getting." Fair market value, like I was some stranger who'd answered a Craigslist ad, instead of the grandfather who'd been picking up her children from school every week for over a year. I told her I needed to think about it, which was engineer speak for I need to run the numbers. Went downstairs to my little space, closed the door, and started doing what engineers do when faced with a problem. I made a spreadsheet. Every contribution I'd made in the 14 months since they'd moved to the Westerville house. Groceries, utilities, repairs, kids, sports fees, birthday presents, Christmas gifts, that elaborate swing set I'd bought in August, because the kids wanted one and Victor was stressed about money. The numbers were brutal. Adi contributed $22,000 in direct cash payments, plus services worth another $8,000 if calculated at reasonable hourly rates. 3 days a week of after-school childcare, yard work, appliance repairs, grocery shopping, countless small fixes around the house. And now Barbara wanted $500 a month on top of everything else. That would mean $18,000 a year just in rent, plus the existing $9,600 in groceries and utilities, plus all the unpaid labor. I called my sister Margaret in Phoenix. She's 62, a retired high school math teacher with zero patience for nonsense and the sharpest analytical mind in our family. Margaret had been Dorothy's closest friend as well as my sister, which meant she knew exactly how to cut through emotional manipulation and get to the facts. "Maggie, I need some perspective here," I said, and laid out the whole financial situation, reading directly from my spreadsheet. She listened without interrupting, the way good teachers do when students are working through complex problems. Then, "Len, you know what she's doing, right? She's testing how far she can push you financially, and every time you say yes to her demands, she learns she can ask for more. But the kids need stability, and Victor's been stressed about money. The kids will be fine. You think Barbara is going to keep you away from your grandchildren if you don't bankrupt yourself paying her inflated rent? She knows you'd fight that legally, and she knows she'd lose. Those kids love you, and courts protect grandparent visitation rights." That conversation with Margaret shifted something in my thinking. I started approaching the situation like I would any engineering problem, gathering data, analyzing patterns, identifying structural weaknesses in the arrangement that was slowly crushing my financial independence. I began recording our conversations on my smartphone, nothing illegal since Ohio is a one-party consent state, just protecting myself the way I document safety violations on construction sites. I researched elder financial abuse laws online, spending hours reading state regulations and case studies. Turns out what Barbara was doing had a name in legal circles: financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult. There were specific protections, reporting mechanisms, even criminal penalties for family members who systematically drained elderly relatives' resources. The next time Barbara brought up the rent increase, I was ready with my own professional approach. We were in their living room, Victor reading some technical manual on the sectional sofa nearby, the evening news playing softly on their mounted flat-screen TV. "Barbara, I've been thinking about your rental proposal," I said, pulling out printed copies of my financial analysis. "I've also been doing some calculations of my own." I handed spreadsheets to both of them, watching Victor look up from his reading with that expression people get when they realize a conversation is about to become much more serious than expected. "In 14 months, I've contributed $30,000 to this household," I said, watching Barbara's marketing smile flicker like a light bulb with loose wiring. "That includes the $8,000 I gave you for the down payment when you bought this house, plus all the ongoing expenses I cover monthly." Victor set down his manual, giving me his full attention for the first time in months. "I also provide 15 hours a week of childcare at school pickup and weekend activities, worth approximately $12,000 annually at current babysitting rates in this area. When I add up repairs I've paid for, kids' sports equipment, birthday, and Christmas presents, plus that swing set, we're looking at additional thousands." I pulled out my phone, opened the voice recording app E'd learned to use. "Now you're asking for another $8,400 annually on top of that, which would bring my total yearly contribution to over $38,000. My entire annual income after taxes is $42,000. Barbara's wine glass stopped moving. "Leonard, I think you're overcomplicating this actually. I'm simplifying it. Mathematically, what you're proposing would consume 90% of my income, forcing me to dip into the $285,000 from selling my house, money I'm planning to leave to Teddy and Helly for college." The living room went quiet except for the low hum of their central air and distant sounds of kids moving around upstairs. Victor looked uncomfortable in that specific way that told me he'd known these numbers for a while but had been choosing not to think about them. "Here's what else I've learned," I continued, pulling out printed pages from my legal research. "Ohio Revised Code 29-3.16 defines financial exploitation of an elderly person, taking advantage of someone over 60 through deception, intimidation, or manipulation to gain control of their property or financial resources. It's a felony." Barbara went pale. "Are you threatening us?" "I'm protecting myself the same way you're protecting your family's financial interests. I've documented every conversation, every payment, every service I've provided. I've researched market rates for the services I provide versus what you're charging me to live here." Victor finally spoke up. "Dad, what exactly are you saying?" "I'm saying I'll continue contributing what I've been contributing, about $800 monthly plus childcare and household help. That's fair compensation for my space and more than reasonable considering everything else I provide. If that arrangement isn't acceptable, I'll start looking for my own place." Barbara tried a different approach, leaning forward with her best concerned expression. "Leonard, I think you're misunderstanding our financial pressures. The mortgage on this house is substantial. And with inflation, I understand perfectly. I also understand that those financial pressures aren't my responsibility to solve by bankrupting myself. When Victor bought this house, he knew what the mortgage payments would be. When you decided to have children, you knew what childcare and activities would cost." I stood up, gathering my papers. "I've spent 40 years in engineering, which taught me something important about load-bearing capacity. Every structure has limits. Push beyond those limits and something fails catastrophically." The conversation ended there, but I could see in Barbara's eyes that she wasn't giving up. Over the next 2 weeks, she tried different tactics. Guilt about the children needing consistency in their living situation. Concerned comments about how difficult it would be for someone my age to start over in a new place. Reminders about how much the family enjoyed having me around, delivered with that practiced sincerity she probably used on difficult clients. I continued my research, spending mornings on my tablet learning about elder financial abuse, tenant rights, and housing options for seniors. I contacted the area agency on aging, spoke with a counselor about my situation without naming names. She confirmed what my instincts were telling me: I was being systematically exploited, and it would only get worse if I didn't establish firm boundaries. I started house hunting online, looking at condominiums and senior-friendly communities within reasonable distance of Westerville. Found several promising options in Dublin and Worthington, places where I could maintain independence while staying close enough to remain involved with Teddy and Helly. When I told Victor and Barbara I'd made an offer on a 2-bedroom condo in Dublin's Riverside Green community, their reactions told me everything I needed to know about their true motivations. Victor looked relieved, like a weight had been lifted off his shoulders. Barbara looked like someone who'd just watched their most profitable client walk out the door. "You don't have to do this, Dad," Victor said, but his tone suggested he actually thought I should. "We can work something out, find a compromise that works for everyone." "I want to do this," I told him, surprising myself with how much I meant it. "I want my own space again, my own kitchen where I can make coffee at 5 a.m. without worrying about waking anyone. I want a mortgage-free home where nobody can change the terms on me." The condo was perfect. Second-floor unit with southern exposure, good natural light, updated kitchen, community pool, and fitness center. The Riverside Green complex was designed for active adults with walking trails and social activities, but no age restrictions that would interfere with grandchildren visiting. I could buy it outright with proceeds from my Dayton house sale and still have substantial savings remaining. Barbara made one final attempt the evening before my closing. She found me on the basement patio, enjoying what I knew would be one of my last cups of coffee in that space. "Leonard, I hope there are no hard feelings about our financial discussions. I really think there might have been some miscommunication about what we were asking." I looked at her, this woman who'd systematically manipulated me for months, trying to rewrite history now that her scheme had failed. "Barbara, there was no miscommunication. You saw an opportunity to extract money from a grieving widower, and you took it. The only miscalculation was assuming I wouldn't eventually apply the same analytical skills I used in 40 years of engineering." She didn't have an answer for that. The next morning, moving day arrived with surprising efficiency. Victor helped me load my truck with the belongings I'd accumulated during my 18-month stay. My clothes, a few pieces of furniture I'd bought for the basement, photo albums Dorothy would have wanted me to keep safe, and the toolbox I'd used for all those household repairs that had saved them hundreds of dollars. "This is a good thing you're doing, Dad," Victor said as we carried the last box up the basement stairs. "I'm proud of you for standing up for yourself." It was the most honest thing Head said to me in months. Barbara appeared in the kitchen doorway as I was saying goodbye, wearing her weekend clothes and that professional smile that never quite reached her eyes. "No hard feelings, Leonard," she said, extending her hand like we were concluding a business meeting. "I hope you'll be very happy in your new place." "I'm sure I will be," I replied, shaking her hand briefly. "And Barbara, I hope you learned something about fair market value." The drive to my new condo in Dublin took 15 minutes through suburban Columbus traffic. Riverside Green was everything the realtor had promised: well-maintained buildings with brick facades and mature landscaping, a community pool with actual people using it, walking trails that connected to Dublin's extensive bike path system. My second-floor unit had a small balcony overlooking a courtyard where residents had planted flower gardens. That first morning in my own place, I woke up at 5:30 a.m. out of habit and realized nobody needed me to be quiet. I made coffee in my own kitchen, a proper pot, not the single-serve machine Ed used in the basement. I sat at my own table, bought at a furniture store the week before closing, and read the Columbus Dispatch for an hour without anyone asking me for help with homework or breakfast or finding missing soccer cleats. It felt like something I'd forgotten I was allowed to have: personal space without negotiation, financial decisions without consultation, the freedom to eat cereal for dinner if I wanted, or to leave dishes in the sink overnight without judgment. Teddy and Helly came to visit the following Saturday. Victor brought them over after lunch, and their excitement about the community pool was infectious. We spent the afternoon swimming and playing pool games, and for the first time in months, I didn't feel like I was performing gratitude for being allowed to spend time with my grandchildren. "Grandpa, can we sleep over sometime?" Helly asked as we sat by the pool, her hair still damp from swimming. "Absolutely," I told her. "Anytime you want. The second bedroom is yours whenever you need it." Victor and I sat in the poolside chairs while the kids played Marco Polo with some other children from the complex. The afternoon sun was warm, the setting was peaceful, and conversation felt easy between us for the first time since the financial discussions had started. "Dad, I owe you an apology," he said, watching Teddy execute an elaborate cannonball. "I let Barbara handle too many family decisions without really paying attention to how they affected you. You were trying to keep peace in your marriage," I said. "I understand that, but you're a grown man with children of your own. Some decisions require your direct involvement." "I know. I've been thinking about a lot of things since you announced you were moving out." We didn't need to discuss Barbara's role in the financial manipulation. Victor wasn't stupid, and he could do the math as well as I could. had chosen to remain passive while his wife systematically extracted money from his grieving father, but he also hadn't actively participated in the scheme. 8 months later, I see Teddy and Helly twice a week, minimum, sometimes 3 times. Wednesdays I pick them up from school and we get ice cream on the way back to their house. My treat, my choice. Saturdays they come swim at Riverside Green, help me tend the small herb garden I've started on my balcony, sometimes sleep over if their parents have evening plans. Victor texts me regularly, and we've had several honest conversations about family dynamics, financial boundaries, and the importance of speaking up when something doesn't feel right. He's a good man who learned an important lesson about passive complicity. Our relationship is stronger now than it was before the financial crisis, built on respect rather than obligation. Barbara and I are polite when we encounter each other during child exchanges or family events. She got what she needed, me out of the basement, so she could stop feeling guilty about financially exploiting her father-in-law. I got what I needed, my independence and dignity back, plus the knowledge that I can protect myself when necessary. The funny thing is, I'm happier now than I've been since Dorothy died. I wake up in my own bed, make coffee in my own kitchen, maintain my own schedule without consulting anyone. When I want company, I call the kids or drive over to see them. When I want solitude, I have it. I've learned something crucial through this experience. Being generous doesn't mean being a pushover. Family love doesn't require financial surrender. And sometimes the best way to preserve relationships is to set clear boundaries about what you will and won't accept from people who claim to care about you. My engineering background taught me that every structure needs proper support and load distribution to remain stable. Families work the same way. You can be helpful, you can be generous, but you don't have to be the foundation that everyone else builds their financial security on top of. Dorothy always said I was too trusting for my own good, that I assumed other people operated with the same ethical standards I tried to maintain. She was right about that, as she was about most things. But she also taught me that it's never too late to learn. Never too late to stand up for yourself when someone tries to take advantage of your good nature. I'm 65 years old. I live 15 minutes from my grandchildren in a mortgage-free condo with a pool and walking trails. I have enough money in the bank to last the rest of my life, protected from manipulation through proper legal documentation. And nobody, not even family, gets to change that arrangement without my explicit agreement. That's probably the most important engineering principle I ever learned. Some loads are worth bearing, and some will collapse the entire structure if you're not careful about your limits. Sometimes the people who claim they love you most are the ones who need the clearest boundaries, because love without respect is just exploitation with better marketing. I learned that protecting yourself isn't selfish when someone else is systematically destroying your future. It's the most responsible thing you can do for everyone involved, including the grandchildren you want to leave something meaningful behind for.